The Sam Laprade Show continues on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, well, it's a little rainy out there today. You may not be thinking about swimming, but I know Martin Sampson, CEO of Canadian Parks and Recreation Association, is thinking about swimming all the time. Hi, Martin.
How are you, Sam?
I'm fantastic. So as the CEO of Canadian Parks and Recreation, I know that you and a colleague put out a paper in regards to the shortage of lifeguards. We heard this in the city last year, that there was a shortage of lifeguards. What's the issue across the country, Martin?
So it is important to note that this is a national problem that reaches into every corner of the Great White North. There is what our members are describing as a crisis-level shortage of lifeguards and swim instructors. So it's more than just lifeguards, it's aquatics professionals, and that has some pretty significant implications for the health and safety of Canadians around water. But it also has a bunch of other implications, which I'm sure we're going to unpack in the next few minutes.
For sure, because I think about, I mean, obviously my daughter did swim lessons, and you know, we've enjoyed many different swimming facilities that have got lifeguards. So, and I guess maybe I took them for granted, Martin, that there would always be youth that were willing to sort of take the courses to get those jobs. But you know, what seems to be the issue? Are there not enough youth being put into the pool, literally?
Yeah, so the pandemic really exacerbated a challenge that was already happening, but the pandemic really, really made it problematic. So over the 3 years, a lot of the courses that certify people as swim instructors and lifeguards were suspended. And many of the individuals that held those roles went off and did other things, and they simply didn't return. And so now what we have is this chronic shortage, which means that many municipalities across the country and other private pool operators are struggling to run their facilities and to keep programs up and running and offered at 100% capacity. I was on a call the other day with representatives from some of the largest municipalities across the country, and we just did a totally unscientific kind of straw poll of the group. And the numbers were really, disarming. There were tens of thousands of people on waiting lists across the country for swim lessons because of the shortage of lifeguards, because we just did not have enough swim instructors or lifeguards to meet the demand. And that means, you know, and you appreciate this, Sam, as a parent of young kids, that is a real stress for parents, because it boils down to an issue of safety around water. And so what we're trying to do, my colleague Bobby White and I at the Life Saving Society of Canada with this op-ed, was just to really start a discussion about it to help move us closer towards a solution. And we did offer some thoughts to the federal government in the context of Budget 23, and we are in the process of discussing with them. But we really wanted to have a larger discussion about this, get a sense of how this issue is being managed and dealt with and received across the country, and get as many people involved in the discussion as possible so that we could, as quickly as possible, chart ourselves towards a solution.
And that op-ed can be found in the Ottawa Citizen. Martin, you know, when I think about this, it becomes a cyclical issue, as you illustrated. I mean, if we can't have enough kids heading into swim lessons, then this is another issue in 15 years from now when we're still looking for lifeguards. It seems like this would be something that would be cyclical.
Exactly right. We have to break that cycle right now. And so what we're proposing is removing the barriers that young people face, in getting their certifications and training, getting more deck-ready personnel in place so that we can do the training on the spot, so that we can offset some of the costs that the municipalities face. Because, of course, swimming lessons are a big revenue generator. If swimming lessons are down, they have less revenue, so they have less ability to attract aquatics professionals, and it becomes a vicious cycle. What we're proposing is to interrupt that cycle, do it as quickly as possible, and then correct it for the next period. And we think that an intervention over the course of the next years would go a long way to helping this problem, and it's relatively cost effective in the grand scheme of things. And given that there are multiple dimensions to this issue, one of course is public safety, but the other is creating meaningful job opportunities for young people that not only would help solve the lifeguarding and swim instructor challenge, but because those training to become professionally certified lifeguards and swim instructors gives you all sorts of other transferable skills, and just makes for I think a more qualified cohort of people for a whole range of jobs as they get older.
Well, certainly when I was young, Martin, I was not qualified at all to take any of those jobs. But a lot of my friends, they really relied on that for their summer employment. And then they were in leadership roles. And to your point, it led to other opportunities for them. So it's not just about being on the deck or just about being in the pool. It really is contributing to the community as a whole.
Exactly right. Really, in order to become a certified lifeguard or swim instructor, you have to meet a certain standard of maturity and professionalism, and those skills go with you for the rest of your career. But in addition to it being a real opportunity to get young people working, drowning places an enormous economic burden on Canada. In 2018, drowning cost Canadians close to $200 million. That's from Parachute Canada, which is the injury prevention charity in Canada. Great organization, by the way. You should look them up. Mm-hmm. And what we also know is that while drowning, threatens all populations, it disproportionately, it parallels many of the social determinants of health and disproportionately affects Indigenous peoples, new immigrants, the elderly, rural populations. So, addressing this problem has multiple very positive outcomes in terms of public safety and getting the next generation of youth kind of job ready and prepared for a good career.
Well, there's nothing worse on a beautiful summer day to hear that someone's lost their life trying to enjoy the 8-9 weeks of summer that we have, Martin, and around all sorts of water, whether that be the backyard pool or the local lake or river. It certainly is so disheartening to see when lives are lost.
That's correct. It's heartbreaking because many of the lives lost, they just destroy families, right? And these deaths are preventable, and they're preventable in two ways. We know that fewer than 1% of drownings occur in lifeguard supervised settings. So the more lifeguards you have, the fewer people drown, period. But the other thing is that when people learn the basics, the swim to survive skills, then they're much less likely to drown. And right now we have a deficiency both of lifeguards and of young people who are learning to swim and who are learning these, swim to survive skills. And that's going to have huge implications. We're actually very worried about what the next couple of summers is going to bring if we don't address this problem.
Really interesting. I don't think this is on the minds of many people, Martin. Is that the reason behind the op-ed?
That's exactly right. We just wanted to start a discussion. It is on the minds of our members. At CPRA, our members are the 13 provincial and territorial parks and recreation associations, and all of their members, which is 85 to 90% of Canadian municipalities. It's also very much on the mind of the Life Saving Society Canada and all of their members. We were able in a couple of days before putting this submission into the pre-budget, process for the federal budget 2023. We were able to secure the endorsement of more than 50 organizations. So people are noticing this, and I think more and more the average Canadian is going to start noticing this, particularly young parents who go to enroll their kids in swim lessons and find themselves on a 60,000 long person waiting list, which is the case in Toronto. In Toronto, they have an enormous waiting list because of this problem. Wow. But it's not just Toronto. It's in every corner of the country. It has slightly different manifestations depending on where you go. But what we're hearing from our membership right across the country is that this is a national problem and it requires a national intervention and solution.
Martin Sampson is the CEO of the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association. Thanks for sharing, Martin. I appreciate it.
Sam, I really appreciate your interest in this important topic. Call anytime and be well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. Martin Sampson has joined us here a few times in his new role as the CEO of Canadian Parks and Recreation Association. Well, we are getting ready for a very busy lunch. If you hadn't heard the news as well, ABC has just shared, we broke this news here on City News as well, that Fox News host Tucker Carlson and the media company have, quote, agreed to part ways. Fox announced that recently, just a couple of hours ago. Stay with us here on City News.
Sam Laprade will be right back on City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.